Hey, hello everybody. Welcome to the podcast Tech's Potential. I'm Paul Soul, CEO of the Florida High Tech Corridor. I'm not even going to announce what number this is because we're starting to rack them up. It is our chance. It's my chance to be able to share with you some of the amazing boundary breaking folks that we have in the corridor and things that they're doing. And I can't think of a better team to talk about breaking some boundaries than Marc and Sharon Hagle that we have here this morning. On March of 2022, they joined New Shepard NS-20, that crew of Blue Origin astronauts, and became two of about 600 individuals who've crossed the von Kármán Line, 100 kilometers, which is the boundary between our atmosphere and outer space. So Marc and Sharon, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having us. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, so I'm and one of the things I like to do at the beginning is be very transparent with the audience. I have wanted to be an astronaut since I was 6. Since it was a little black and white TV, Neil Armstrong coming down the ladder. I was born in 63, so 6 years old, and spent my entire career in the Navy as a fighter pilot pursuing that dream. Never happened. It's okay. I get to meet people like you who've done it. And so I want to my first question to you both is, how did you get the opportunity? Where did this come from in your very soul of wanting to be out in space and do this? Tell us about that.
Well, interestingly enough, Paul, what you just said is exactly what the feedback is for these young kids that have that dream of going to space and then actually becoming a NASA astronaut. When the women were asked, when was the first time they got excited about space? It was a first grade teacher. So you fit right into that
Good
category of kids wanting to go to space.
So to answer your question, very much like you were exposed to an astronomical event, somebody landing on the moon. And that encouraged you as a young child to get excited about space and space opportunities. I had the same experience. When I was a young kid, we moved to Orlando when I was 8 years old, and I'm a little older than you. And I started watching the original rockets, the Vanguard series, which was prior to any of the manned flights go to space. And I remember seeing a rocket ship. We were out on a lake on a raft that we built, and because that's what you do when you're a kid. And I remember watching this rocket ship go up into space, and it only made it up to the horizon, then exploded. Those were the early days of the space program. But it excited me about the opportunity, and it opened my eyes to what's going on. What can we do? What's this all about? And then, of course, when the moon mission started, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon, and John Kennedy excited the entire country and really the whole planet about the opportunities of space. That just put the icing on the cake, and it solidified my want and desire.
Yeah. So tell me about one of the things that, I have a number of friends who are NASA astronauts, and they go through an incredible amount of training. Your background is not in being an astronaut. So walk the audience through a little bit about how far space travel has come with regard to what training did you have to go through? And then I'll just ask you, what was the launch like? Because you can only go through a certain amount of training and then it actually happens. So tell us what that was like.
Well, we actually signed up for a trip to space with Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic back in 2007. And so we did our training, our zero gravity training here at Kennedy Space Center. We also did the centrifuge training at NASTAR, where NASA astronauts train. And then we had that opportunity to go to Star City, Russia, and train with the Russian cosmonauts. All that being said, going to space with Blue Origin is a totally different launch and procedure. And that we trained for like 4 or 5 days, I think it was.
So, yes, I've got to give NASA a lot of credit for what they accomplished in the training of the astronauts. When they started, they didn't understand the risk and exposure that was associated with space travel. They didn't understand how a rocket was going to perform. They didn't understand what it was going to do to the human body. So there was so much experience and knowledge gathered during the early days and the continuing days of NASA and the space program, that now that we get to us flying with Blue Origin, there is so much known, and the technology has advanced so far that our training really came down to a 4-day session for what we're doing. And the training really wasn't how to survive space or what to expect. The training was to teach you what to do and how to do, and to do it over and over again. Because I got to tell you, when you fly to space, you get a little excited. And when you get a little excited, sometimes your brain doesn't work so well. So you've got to have that muscle memory. You have to know how to get back into a seat in zero gravity. We must have done that 100 times because that's important. You've got to be in your seat after you fly in space in zero gravity. And it was a very well organized training session, very comprehensive for what we had to learn, but certainly not what NASA had to teach their astronauts.
So let me ask each of you individually, and Sharon, I'll start with you. What was your aha moment? Was there a special time on the launch that you either thought like, wow, I didn't expect this, or something that you remember to this day? And then Marc, after Sharon, Marc, over to you.
There were so many, especially once you started to lift off very slow motion, and as you built up the speed and the G forces, and the Earth falls quickly far behind. You're just reaching up to the stars. But I think my most memorable thing was once we got to zero gravity was how dark and opaque that black wall is. There's no reflection of stars or light. And to look back on the Earth and to see it with your own eyes, um, you know, it's very emotional. And I didn't realize how emotional it was going to be.
You know, it's amazing, some little things that one doesn't expect. When they closed the door to the space capsule, there was a clink of metal as the door latch closed. I'll never forget that. As they counted down from 10, I'll never forget that, because now you know we're really going. Then the engines ignited. And when the engines ignited, you feel the roar and the ship starts to vibrate, and you see a red cast along the ceiling of the space capsule where it's reflecting the flame up into the color of the flame up into the capsule. You never forget that. The physical aspects are incredible. Once we got to space and we were looking out the window and looking back at Earth and looking at the thinness of the atmosphere and looking at the blackness of space, you'll never forget that. But I don't remember most of what I saw because I was so excited, my brain just couldn't absorb it.
So that's tremendous. And in fact, I'm gonna I'm gonna leave it there because I want to talk about what you're doing now for SpaceKids Global and how that kind of plays in. But I also want to let the audience know, we're here. That Marc and Sharon live here in the corridor. I mean, so they're participating, they're engaged. Let me roll now into SpaceKids Global. Tell us about that, how that started, and your vision for what you're trying to create. Because I love it because of what it means for the corridor, starting kids early in something that's exciting. Tell us about Space Kids.
I founded the Space Kids Global back in March of 2015, and it was really because of the sole purpose that people weren't really focused on the elementary school. Everybody was doing college scholarships, which we all need that too. But after listening to some of these astronauts talking about the first time that they really knew that they wanted to go to space, it was when they were 6 and 7. And Dr. Michio Kaku said recently when he was speaking at Rollins College, he said, if you don't have kids hooked in math and science by 6 and 7, you've lost them. So I tried to pitch that to other people, and nobody was doing anything at that time, 7, 8 years ago. And I finally got the message. Richard Branson said, if your goals don't scare you, they're too small. So I figured I might as well step out and see what I can do with this, because I thought it was important enough to start inspiring these elementary school kids in math and science, but particularly ensuring that young girls are equally represented. And then as I start to research this, I understand that there's 3.5 million vacancies in the STEAM fields predicted by 2025. That's not that far away. And I don't want these kids to be left behind.
The need in industry, the need in the economy is beyond belief. And quite frankly, if you look at the growth of population, look at global warming, look at everything you hear in the news today, the reality is planet Earth cannot support the population growth for the next 1,000 years, I'll say. I don't know when the crossover period is.
We won't be there.
But we need to develop the capability of supporting planet Earth from other areas and supporting the human race from other areas. If we're relying solely on this small satellite called planet Earth relative to the universe, it doesn't have the longevity that everybody thinks it does.
Yeah, and that's so true. And it's one of the things that I see that I love about the corridor is being able to tie things like space travel with the need for protecting our planet, with the need for global farming and the different things that are all, as kids get inspired by you all and that can hop into a bunch of different areas, I think is fabulous. I want the by the way, and I think you know this, but we started a community grants program, and you're the first recipient for one of our grants, which is exciting for us because we hadn't
Oh, wow.
we hadn't really reached out, and we looked at, the corridor itself is funded by precious taxpayer dollars from the state through University of Central Florida, University of South Florida, and that's part of the first connection that happened. We saw something, we had put it out there on the website. We saw something saying, "Hey, who is this group?" And so that's starting. So we're excited about that because we're investing in outcomes. We're investing in the creative nature of the communities that we serve, which I think is fantastic. Where do you see? Think about as I think about Space Kids Global, 5 years from now, what would you like that organization to either be about or do or accomplish so that we can help you get there? Any thoughts on a vision
Well,
5 years now?
Go ahead.
let me start. This is what we were doing before our launch. It was like, get that excitement, and all of a sudden you were like, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. And finally I said, maybe he won't come back from space. But that's the best thing about having your spouse and husband with you to share this great.
We have a business plan for where we want to go. SpaceKids Global, in its early years, started going into elementary schools and talking to the children face to face and getting them excited about the participation in the space program, the participation in science, and the capability of what technology can do for them and do for their future and do for their careers. And it's been very successful in that. And Sharon has visited with over 100,000 children so far. It then went on to other ventures that Sharon will talk about. Where we want to go next is our focus on SpaceKids Global is for the young children, the age groups that Sharon has already talked about. But it doesn't end there. You've got to keep them participating. You have to keep them involved. So we're looking to partner with other companies and not incorporate them into our procedure, but then put them alongside of us, not recreate what they're doing, so that we have a continuing spectrum of what we're doing with the young kids, continue that through junior high school and high school, encourage them into colleges, Encourage them to have capability of scholarships in college, encourage them to do experiments and come up with fresh ideas, help them find venture capitalists in the future so they can start their own companies, introduce them to industry, bring industry into the program, and let them set up internships so they are starting to generate future employees for their companies. Totally vertically integrate the system. So, with help like you and companies like you, where we can identify those people that can partner with us, I hope one day we can set up a master board of directors made up of the leaders of all of those different aspects, where we are doing a totally vertically integrated, continuous program to start the kids young and keep them involved and help them develop their own technology and their own businesses for the future.
Yeah.
What SpaceKids
Mark,
Global is doing is we're making learning fun. We're bringing hands-on projects to the kids. Last year, we sent 21 science projects to the International Space Station right here at Kennedy on SpaceX. The experiments were there for about 3 months. We just finished an essay competition on why I want to go to space with our partnership with Zero Gravity. And the winners get a free seat on Zero Gravity to fly like an astronaut. Those winners will fly in October of this year. And so what we want to do is get more programs like this, reach out to the corporations so that we can partner with them, because now that we have the kids' attention, we need to keep them engaged. And I see that as making them participators, not spectators.
yeah, the hands-on piece, Sharon, that you talk about, I've learned just over time how important that is. That engagement piece is critical. Um, Sharon, you mentioned a term that I love when it comes, and it's STEAM. So talk to me about the A. Talk to me about the
Uh,
arts and creativity as it applies to to STEM and how you see that developing.
Well, one of the feedback that we're getting from the children is that they think there's only one job in the space industry, and that's an astronaut. And if we're going to prepare these kids to live off planet, then we need to have everybody there. We need chefs and farmers and designers. The music, can you imagine Star Trek without the theme song? I mean, that's what we try to get the kids excited about. Our spacesuits are designed particularly for us, so we need designers on that. We have engineers that make our seats like the Princess and the Pea. Um, if there's a wrinkle in that seat, you're going to fill it at 5Gs. So yes, we do need to put the A in, and that's very challenging with the space industry because they still refer to it as STEM.
but if you just look at the studies on the education of children and their capabilities, uh, kids that have potential for arts, kids that have potential for music, what you're really demonstrating there are children that have imaginations and have the ability to think outside the box and to think of things differently than going from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And those are the people that are going to imagine the technology of the future. Those are the people that are going to imagine what's not here today and what it might be and what the answer might be. When the United States put the first man on the moon, the average age of the person that worked on that mission to the moon was 26 years old. That means there are a lot of young kids that weren't programmed to follow step 1, 2, 3, 4. They were imagining solutions. They were problem solvers. And that's what the A is all about. If you bring people in that are excited about the arts, uh, what you're saying is their brain works a little differently than some other people, and maybe they're going to help us solve these problems.
I think that's tremendously powerful, and I think most of our audience would see that too. I've seen that, that creativity piece, and I've said this on record, that quite frankly, our educational system is not designed for that. It is
No.
often designed to sort of drum out the creativity piece. Just a personal story: when in the Navy, one of the tours I had was out at China Lake, north of Edwards Air Force, north of Mojave, about an hour or so, and we used to create 2 weekends in April where we would bring 8th graders, one group of 8th grade boys, and then in 2 weeks, 2 weekends later, one group of 8th grade girls. And we would do that every year and match them up with women scientists for the girls and men scientists for the boys. And what always amazed me was and we would give them problems to solve and things to do and labs and equipments to work on. And I guarantee you, each and every time, the girls would win in the creativity world of coming up with unique solutions.
Yep. Yep.
And just that what the corridor is doing with women entrepreneurs and those kinds of things, that and focusing in that area, it's creativity that I see that's left on the cutting room floor. One of the things I love about Florida is folks like you who are not willing to say no because. You're going to say yes and. You're going to say, hey, this is that growth mindset that can keep going, which I think is awesome. I'm also going to take your ask about partnerships and absolutely help with you all connect that vertical integration, Mark, that you talked about, so that a youngster doesn't all of a sudden, go down an alley and then get stopped and then like, where do I go next? That we're able to kind of show them what can be done. And I see that happening in our universities, and I see that happening at our community colleges. So the things that you're leading the charge on really, really we're making progress on that for sure. Let me just sort of round this out and ask you, is there something that you'd like to share with what I think is a pretty diverse audience on this? Not very many, but we're getting more and more viewers, that you'd like to share with them as we close this out.
Boy, I'm going to follow along with the thought process that you just started and expand on it a little bit. Um, I think we've all identified that what we're trying to do with SpaceKids Global is important to the future and is in its infancy and is developing a program that I hope will be very beneficial to kids of the future and future generations. Continuing with the thought you had, one of the mantras I have in my company is don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do. And the opportunities that are open to the next generations are purely incredible. You hear so much about I can't do this because, and I can't do that because, and the government won't let me do this, and my teachers won't let me do that. That's all well and good, but too many kids are taught that approach to things, and they need to be taught a different approach. They need to be exposed to what the possibilities are,
Right.
and allow those possibilities to become realities. Don't let what you can't do interfere with what you can do.
Mark, thank you. Thank you for that. And for the folks, realize that Mark and Sharon are philanthropists. They've invested a lot of their own resources. They're investing their own personal time and capital. You can see the passion that you have to be able to. There's nothing more exciting, right, than to really sort of have that youngster be a part of one of the programs that you're working on, and the next thing you know, 20 years later, they're the ones going to Mars. They're the ones that are gonna design the next satellite. They're the ones that are gonna be the chef to make the food for the people that are on the moon. I mean, all those things I think are tremendously important.
If I could add very quickly, you're thinking too small. They're gonna design the transporter that you see on Star Trek. They're going to design the capability of traveling faster than the speed of light. You need to think bigger.
Well, and Paul, we talked to the kids about we were talking about the A in STEAM. Uh, a lot of these new ideas came from the arts. I think it was 85 years ago when Dick Tracy was talking into his watch, and then we have, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, that had his communicator. That all these things are now items that we use every day.
And you highlighted, Mark, you're exactly right. I mean, think of our own kind of mental models that we've developed, and they're limiting. my mental model is limiting for sure. And I was a huge star. I loved it, the fact that William Shatner got to go up as well, and that he literally cried, as he landed, just because of, he that whole transporter thing. I made a little phaser when I was a kid. I wanted to shoot my sisters. So those are the kind of things that, and I look and I think about Florida, and I think about, what we have from the undersea world through what's on the land in the environment, and then be able to take, as you described, those experiments into space where they can go see. I mean, as we're recording this in a couple of weeks, if knock on wood, we're going to launch a rocket that's going to go around the moon,
Yep.
getting ready for another moon landing. And that, just planting those seeds, I think is tremendous. And you have my commitment from the folks in the corridor to partner with you directly to be able to help, because you never know where that one student, that one artist, that one person has the way to think about, just as you described, think about it differently, going forward. And any other thoughts, since we as we round this out? Thank you again for your time, but I'd love to hear any other thoughts, and we're going to keep people connected with you for sure.
Well, thank you so much. We really
Thank-
appreciate that.
Thank you. And I guess I'd like to close with, dreams do come true. That little 12-year-old girl that was in West Virginia listening to a PA system when Alan Shepard became the first American in space in 1961 actually thought she had no way in heck to get to space. And her dream came true after 16 years. So dream big.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a great way. That whole dream big piece is a monster, of just wonderful possibilities for sure. So thank you again, both of you. Mark, I look forward to meeting you in person. Sharon, it was great to meet you in person. We're going to stay connected and think about how to connect with all those parts of that ecosystem to be able to do it. One thing that still sticks out, Sharon, when we first met, was the forgotten kids, before 8th grade, that you are zeroing in on this. They're creative in preschool, for gosh sakes, as they're coming up with ideas. And that's I feel something that I can give back, and that others in the corridor and folks like you are able to give back, to be able to be excited about those things. So thank you again. Thank you for your time. For the audience, thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of the podcast. I'm always interested in new guests, as we see the magic of the region, and really talk about innovation, the inspiring folks that we have here, and the magical things that they're doing. So thank you again. God bless you, and we'll see you next time.